I'm Scott Miller. It's the 3rd of November, 2023. This is my vlog of daily life living in Nicaragua. Today we're going to be dealing with a little bit of a harder subject than we often do. We're going to be talking about one of the common scams that is run against foreigners, and I hate having to talk about these kinds of things, but they're very important because these kinds of things are real, they affect real people, and a lot of you could be easily protected from them if you were just cognizant of the fact that they can exist, how they might work, and how it might affect you. So today, traditionally, we've talked quite a bit about real estate scams, and those are abundant and affect just about everybody, right? Not that everyone is scammed by it, but almost everyone is approached by an opportunity to be scammed by it. Unlike those, if you are single, especially older, and especially a man, but not necessarily any of those things, moving to Nicaragua or visiting Nicaragua, there are what are known as dating and marriage scams that are very abundant, extremely well known, practically expected that you will at least encounter that they may exist, and it's important to know about them because we recently had a number of discussions on the channel where it appears someone from the channel had this happen to them, didn't realize that this was happening. People in the comments recognized it, and unfortunately we could have protected someone had we had that information. So we weren't able to save him, but we may be able to protect some of you. So we're going to get to that right after the bump. If you're moving to one of any number of lower income countries, there is a tendency towards society and culture looking to expats as a way to make money. Now, of course, every culture looks at tourists as a cash cow. People come and spend money, whether it's in restaurants or hotels or buying extra services or going shopping for a new watch, all those things people do while on vacation. So we know that tourists are going to generate money, but there's a difference where, especially in lower income countries, you tend to have a lot of expats. People with normal resources in their home country may find that moving to a lower cost country means that their money just goes much, much farther and they can do things they never imagined. If you're, worth hundreds of millions of dollars, you don't care. You have so much money you can spend it anywhere. You choose the place you want. And so going to a lower income country, while might be a choice, so are higher income ones. If you're from the United States, you may choose to move to Nicaragua, for example, but you also might choose to move to Switzerland. But if you're only making enough money to barely survive in the United States, moving to Switzerland is generally impossible, both because you couldn't afford to live there and they probably won't let you move there. But Nicaragua, with a normal American income, will be very welcoming, both that they will allow you to move and that your money will allow you to live incredibly well in ways you never imagined you'd be able to live if you stayed in the United States. So we see a lot of traffic happening in this way. Because of that, because of the natural flow of people, the people who live in lower income countries, and this is famously happening all throughout Southeast Asia, through much of Latin America, through much of Africa, but some places have a lot more tourists than others who come to stay, have cultures that allow them to stay long term. Places like Nicaragua, and Nicaragua being no exception, will naturally have a segment of the population who begins to look at the expats as a way to make money directly, not as tourism, but to simply find ways to get money from them. And this can happen in any number of ways. We talk about the real estate scams that happen all the time, and generally those are being perpetrated from other foreigners scamming the foreigners who are newer than them, right? And we see some of that in other services like that, but of locals, you also see things like scam lawyers. And we warn about this all the time, right? And someone sent me a page that I don't know is a scam, but it looked like it, right? It's a legal page. They have all this great information, but it's all in English and targeted suspiciously, uniquely, only at services that an expat would need, and almost exclusively things that an expat would only think they need and not really need. And even if they did need it, only when they're first moving and not later. That means they're pretty much set up to only deal with people who may be in a ripe to be scammed mode, and doing so in English and promoting it to the outside. Does that make it a bad thing? No, not necessarily, but it means it's on a path towards that. So we see this in accountants and lawyers and business advisors and all kinds of different roles that you're going to encounter. And that's natural. That is not a thing that Nicaragua does. It is any poor environment where there's a large number of expats, and the amount of money that can be generated from scamming expats is going to outweigh anything else that someone can do. You're going to naturally have just the free commerce is going to push people in this direction. If expats continue to give money into these scam systems, there's nothing that's going to abate them, right? They're going to just run rampant because they are financially what makes sense. They are the businesses that expats are voting for with their wallets, so to speak. Now, it's very real, right? And the government doesn't have a large incentive to try to look out for foreigners because it represents a huge amount of taxable income for the country from people who otherwise aren't spending money in the country. So while they don't want people to be scammed, they also have very little reason to go out of their way to protect people who otherwise are not members of Nicaraguan society, whether as long-term expats or whatever. So that's a little bit of foundation as to why these things happen. What is the specific scam that we're going to be talking about today? This is generally known as the Nicaraguan wife scam. And let me give you some background. When I first lived in Grenada 8 years ago, I used to have breakfast from time to time with a group of expats, mostly who were Canadians, and they all had a similar story, which was they moved to Nicaragua. They immediately fell in love with a girl here. It just happens to be a bunch of old guys. They're falling in love with some young girl, and she, is immediately enamored of them, right? And they were never able to find love in their home country, and they came here and immediately they met this beautiful girl who's much younger than them. It doesn't necessarily have to be the case of things, but this is generally what you hear. And then their story is that person pushed them to get married. They ran out and got married because they never imagined they would meet someone so young and beautiful and attractive, and they got married, and their family immediately got control of their bank accounts under Nicaraguan banking laws because marriage is joint property. They emptied all of their bank accounts, which of course they're legally allowed to do because they're their bank accounts too, and left the expats with nothing. Then they divorced them and moved on, or just left them, or whatever. All things that are completely legal. And the question is, why did you marry someone here? And there's a million questions with that. So we're going to talk about a few things. Okay, so first of all, in the same vein, when you move down to Nicaragua, we talk about this a lot, right? That people feel this pressure to buy a house right away. There's all these things that are huge life decisions that you would never make rapidly in your home country, and people make them when moving to Nicaragua for some reason. That bizarre mindset of impatience to big life decisions carries over to relationships in many cases. So what we hear very often is the story of Americans or Canadians who move down and immediately upon arriving in the country happen to meet the person of their dreams and end up with them for a long time. And of course that can happen. You can arrive and simply meet the most perfect person, and from time to time that will happen, but that should be the exception, and it should not be something you're looking for. You should not be looking to establish a new relationship upon arrival in a country. You want to go on a date, you want to go out to the bar, maybe meet someone, okay. But should you be looking for making giant life decisions like meeting the person of your dreams when you've only just arrived in a new location and, importantly, culture and possibly language? No, there's a really bad time to do that because you are incredibly vulnerable. That people do this and are immediately met with, really young, really attractive people that they feel are, out of their league in other circumstances. While, again, that's possible, the reality is that's unlikely, at least to the degree that it's happening, especially in your first few days. You show up to a new place and suddenly the person of your dreams just happens to meet you that first day. That's very unlikely, right? And you haven't established what normal is. You don't know what normal dating procedures are. You don't know what normal scams are. You don't know anything, right? So you're incredibly vulnerable. Same reason you don't want to buy a house when you first get here. You don't know what market value is. You don't know how things work. You haven't established the important relationships you need in your life to protect yourself. And that's something that people don't realize when you're, say, living in America. So I grew up in New York. When I dated in New York, it was easy for a number of reasons to protect myself. One, I was very poor. So when I was dating, I had nothing particular to offer anyone. You couldn't, date me and empty my bank accounts because I had nothing for you to get, right? So that was the first piece. Americans are all about the same income, and most, people in the dating ages are pretty darn poor, and there's a lot of reactions you wouldn't have. You would very rarely run out and get married right away. You would wait a normal amount of time. In the United States, that's normally many months or years. And no one would think it weird to wait that long. It's not like it's easy to put pressure on someone to move faster, because it's not what people do. It'd be very awkward. You also will have a social network under normal circumstances. You'll have friends who are looking out for you. Yes, this person's great. We like hanging out with them. Something's off. I don't think they really like you. I think they're after your money, right? Like, you can figure out those things pretty easily because you have a social network that will, in theory, protect you, or at least give you some guidance. When you first move to a new country, you're going to be missing all of that, along with all the social clues and context that you need for just good dating in general, let alone good decision-making around life plans. So there is a very high tendency of people to run out and find expats when they first arrive and date them because they offer an opportunity where they lack all of the necessary context and knowledge to know what normal dating should be like, to know that, like, marriage is not a normal thing here. So if someone is like, oh, we should get married, oh, there's all these reasons we need to get married right away, my family needs us to get married, you would say, well, that's really weird because people don't do marriage here. Like, that's not a thing. Can you get married here? Absolutely. Legally, it's recognized, and the church is here to support it, but the average person who says they're married isn't actually legally married. The terms are used very differently here. And those are things you have to be here a while to learn, those nuances, and to understand the social context of when people mean they're just saying they're married and when people are legally bound in a way that gives them access to your bank accounts and so forth. Now, it's important to understand that in many cases, people want to get married because they're going to get residency, for example. But again, it's often a situation where someone is scamming you into convincing you that you need to have residency, or that it's hard to get in general, and that you need to get married so that you can stay, which is absolutely not the case. And 99% of the time, you can just stay anyway. The residency by marriage may be convenient and maybe something you want long term, but short term, it's not something you go after making a point of, ooh, I need to find someone, date them, and get married so I can stay. It's not really how it works. It's an option, but it's just not a logical way to go for almost any people. In the case that came up that we're talking about, the person had an easy path to retirement residency here, and the fact that they got married sure gave them a second path, but it was an alternative path. And a lot of people who are getting married legitimately will already have access to residency, and the residency by marriage may be a bonus, but it is a very mild bonus. It is not a goal in and of itself in any way whatsoever. Once someone has you in that situation where you're maybe getting married or maybe just dating, there's a lot of opportunities to get things. Now, this scam can range from, like I gave the description, where someone is stealing your bank accounts, your houses, your cars, basically everything you've saved up for your lifetime can be gone because of a marriage that was not fully legit, and they were out to get you rather than to be a legitimate marriage partner. That's an extreme on one side, but I've met multiple people who've had that happen. It is not entirely the fault of the people who are running the scams. These things should be, in most cases, pretty darn obvious, and you don't be rushing into these things. Don't rush into the house. Don't rush into the relationship. I realize you're starting a new life. You want all the pieces all at once, but that's not how life works. You just can't do that safely. You have the right to do it, but you can't do it safely. No one can. You have to adapt first. Feel free to date. Feel free to meet people. But don't make these giant life decisions. Don't let a single person who has a lot to gain from you be in a position to gain that from you, right? So on one side, we have this really horrific scam that can be life-destroying. On the other side, we have much more casual scams, right? Where someone is dating you or spending time with you or whatever, and their goal is simply to make money. This is very casual, and this happens anywhere, right? But they may be like, oh, I want you to take me out to dinner. Oh, can you buy me this thing? Oh, and then you start getting, very commonly, my mother is sick, my grandmother died. There's all these little expenses in life that seem to happen only when you just start dating someone. And this is really common. Nearly everyone I know who has dated someone in Nicaragua has had at least someone that they dated, not everyone that they dated, but has had someone have exactly these things happen to them, and very specifically, coincidentally, right as they start dating the person in question. Oh, I just lost my job. Oh, I just had a baby. Oh, my mother is sick. Like, very specific, repeatable things that you can basically predict are going to happen to people. And there are very legitimate responses. Can you help me look for a job? Can you help me find an online job? Can you help me with my English skills? Can you assist me, right? There are things that really don't cost you very much money and maybe take some effort, and you can do a lot as an expat to assist a Nicaraguan in getting access to the right things, knowledge of things, training, whatever. And if you're having a good interaction with someone who is legitimately looking for real help, it's easy to spot what that's going to look like. And if you have someone who's constantly coming and saying, oh, no, I don't want training in a job, can I have some money for something? Sure, everyone, especially in a relatively low income environment, would like some money for things from time to time, basically all the time. And as much as you're willing to give them, they're probably going to be happy to take. Not everyone, but an awful lot of people. And you can't hold that against anyone because, I mean, if you're living paycheck to paycheck in the United States and you have a multi-millionaire friend come along who's able to throw money around like there's no tomorrow, they don't have to worry about a single thing, and they start buying you dinner, well, sometimes you don't feel badly being like, hey, we're walking down the street, I could use a hot dog. Yeah, man, like, no problem, right? If it's a trivial amount of money and you get used to it, why wouldn't you ask for things, right? If one person, it makes a huge life difference and the other, it is not noticeable, it's natural that you're going to have those things happen. So don't look at it as a hard line. There's a natural amount of, look, the expats probably have an outrageous amount of money compared to most of the Nicaraguans that they're going to meet. And so there is a natural flow. Even if this is all inside the United States, you would naturally pay for your friends who are much lower income. When I lived in Texas, I had some friends who were a fraction of my income, sometimes between 1/10 to 1/20th of my income was the differential between working adults. And so in order to do things together, I would often pay for everything, their food, their drinks, their transportation, whatever. And it's completely normal. And in no way is that someone taking advantage of the other person. It is simply the cost of being able to hang out. For one person, it doesn't matter. And for one person, it means a lot. Same thing will apply here. Don't be afraid of that. But when people are coming to you with unrealistic needs, right? If someone you're dating or you're friends with and they come to you and they're like, look, I don't need this money, but $2,000 would allow me to do all these really fun things I wanted to do. I want to take a vacation. I want to buy this. I want to do that. And you say, I don't care about $2,000 here. Knock yourself out. That's great. That's a great relationship. That's how you ask for $2,000. It could be, I want to start a business. I don't want to have to work for other people. You have so much money. Could you bankroll me to start my own company? Heck, yeah, if you want to bankroll someone to start their own business, do that. Fantastic. Be that guy. That's awesome. Now, but if someone comes to you and says, oh, I need all this money because, so-and-so in my family is sick and they need, well, what's wrong with the free healthcare that they have, right? Is there a reason why they need additional money? Is it a big amount of money? Is it $5, right? Like, whatever. Oh, you need $5 for something, you don't have it? Okay. But, suddenly you need $1,000 for something that is supposed to be free? Why do you need that? Why only you? And why only when we first get to know each other, not after a long time or sometime before we met, right? That constant asking for money and giving you reasons why you will feel badly and feel, it's a medical emergency, it's a family emergency, it's, I lost my job, some tragic thing has happened, and you can solve that problem. If you were in America, of course you would solve that problem for someone that you knew that had that happen to them. So why wouldn't you here where you can make so much more of a difference so easily? Of course you're going to. And it's really hard to say, I don't believe that, your mother's really sick. I don't believe that your grandmother really died, right? When the chances are they're not really sick and didn't really die. But how do you say that? What if they did, right? That's not the moment to question. And we're taught that we can't question those things. And so people know that, right? And so they play on that a lot. And so there's a lot of these made up ways to get money. So whether you're on that side and you can just say no, but someone's like, hey, give me some money, or you're into this, my bank accounts were emptied and my life has been destroyed mode, in all those cases, it comes through this confidence scam of dating confidence, right? Whether you're dating or married, there's this spectrum, but it is very common. And I hate that I have to say that it's very common, that it's the kind of thing you do have to be consciously looking out for. But it doesn't mean that the average person is like that. It doesn't mean that it's going to happen to everyone and that it's just most people. It's that if you're here as an expat, and there's the dog drinking out of the, I'm just going to get her there. Always the dog drinking out of the pot while I'm doing the show. She is so goofy. The thing that happens is, even if it's only 1% of the population, which is still a lot, is willing to do these scams. And a lot of people do it because their family pressures them. It's not that the person that's talking to you is necessarily out to get you or, this terrible person who would scam you without thinking. It's generally that their parents or some other family members who've never met you, and you are just a statistic. They hear that someone has met you, or they send someone out in the hopes of meeting you or someone like you, and the scam is coming third hand. They're not seeing you as a real person. They've never met you, and the person who's pressured to do it is getting pressure from them, not internal pressure. And so you end up in a situation where your personal connection with someone may not make any difference at all. To make these kinds of situations much worse, what will often happen is that when you end up especially marrying someone, especially very quickly, right? All these things are red flags. That you meet someone right away, that they pressure you for marriage, that you get a full marriage and not just say that you're married. If someone is like, oh, I'd like to move in with you, of course they would like to not have to pay the bills. They don't want to live with their parents. They want to live with you. Obviously, but they're also not getting some long-term access to your finances. They're just living in your house and maybe eating your food. And great, make your decisions. But if you were a normal person in America and you were dating someone who had far less money than you, and you had a nice apartment, you both get benefits under normal circumstances of you living together. So it's not a weird thing for them to ask. And yes, it is probably a big financial or similar benefit to them, but it's probably not a hardship to you. That's a very different thing. When you have these, and you have this thing that happens real fast, other things that tend to happen with it, the person that you're dating or their family may suddenly produce a family lawyer, for example. Watch out for my mother-in-law is a lawyer and they're going to help us out, right? Or, I have a friend that's a lawyer. This is our family lawyer. That lawyer is probably working for the family and not for you. And while that lawyer may be out to actively scam you, as appears to be the case in the story that came up this week on the channel, or just maybe representing someone else primarily, and you're only going to be represented if it doesn't conflict with the interests of the family. In both cases, you're out to get screwed, maybe a lot or a little, but you don't have legal representation of your own. Very importantly, every single thing you do in Nicaragua, from buying a house to getting residency to getting married, you need to have established your social context. That takes time. You need to establish a social network. That takes time. And you need to establish your legal framework. Now, the person who made comments that we're responding about mentioned they think, I don't know how you live in Nicaragua without a lawyer. You have to have a lawyer for everything. And that's not true. You only need a lawyer when you're going down dangerous paths and doing really complex things like setting up a business, getting residency, which, okay, most people who are going to stay will eventually want to get residency. So you'll need a lawyer for that. But you just need a residency lawyer. You don't need like a lawyer that you keep all the time. I have a lawyer that I keep all the time, right? I have consigliere because it makes sense, because I do lots of things, and we have a family, and we have businesses, and we have investments, and we have residencies, and we have children who have futures to worry about. We have a very complex environment. So we have a very different situation than most people. But other than having a residency lawyer, you don't normally need to interact with a lawyer, just the same as if you're in the United States. If you were moving to the United States, you would definitely want an immigration lawyer to protect you in your immigration processes, but you don't need one for getting a job or renting an apartment or things like that. Same here. The thing that you definitely want a lawyer for, always, U.S. or Nicaragua, is if you're going to buy a house, if you're going to start a business, if you're going to get married. Now, in the United States, a lot of people forego the lawyer for getting married, but many do not, right? It is common for people who are in a wealthier status to have a lawyer, and you have to think of yourself here when you're in Nicaragua as being, if you're an expat, you are either in a wealthier status or you're going to be treated as such. However, the only thing you need to really know is that marriage is not a normal thing here. Normal people are not running out and getting married in the American sense. They're not making a legal commitment where you have bank accounts and other things exposed. The average person who is getting married simply is deciding to move in together, sometimes very quickly, possibly combine financial resources temporarily while they're still together, right? Sure, share expenses, pool your resources, that's fine, but don't give access to the bank accounts, don't give access to the ownership or proxy capabilities, don't give them power of attorney or things like that. And if you do need to give power of attorney, you can make it extremely isolated, only for very specific tasks. Nicaragua has a great legal framework for this. People won't tell you that if they're trying to scam you, but if you have a good lawyer, they'll be like, yeah, we can protect you in all kinds of ways. So as long as you're not getting legally married and you're just doing normal Nicaraguan marriage, you don't need a lawyer for that either. It's only when you cross that generally inappropriate barrier into full marriage. If you want to do that, that's fine. I'm not saying there's something wrong with it. I'm saying that most people who are doing it because they're not taking the time to learn the social context and situation here in Nicaragua, are letting con artists who live here play on common misconceptions of North Americans who are projecting their North American culture onto Nicaragua. They say, well, we have this really formal marriage process. It is expected. It's normal. I'm expecting people to give me pressure about it. So they know that, and so they'll use that against you, and they know you won't question it. Why would you question whether marriage is a thing? But it is, right? So once you have all that context, once you have all those clues, once you have a good lawyer that you trust, but you need to take time, one that you get yourself, not one that someone who is trying to sell you property or someone who's trying to get you to go into business with them or someone that's trying to marry you provides for you, right? Then you'll have this protection. When you know you've got a good lawyer, you know you've got someone to kick ideas off of, you know you have someone looking out for you. You need to have friends here first. You just do those things. Don't put the cart before the horse. That is everything. Every time I hear something going dramatically wrong in Nicaragua, it is someone put the cart before the horse. That is the consistent issue. Bought a property before they did their research, got married before they knew what was going on, whatever, exposed their things, and suddenly had something terrible happen. And we don't know the details of what happened in this particular equation, but I know so many people who've either fled from the marriage scam because it was about to happen, or are caught in it currently, or had it happen and lost everything. It is such a common problem, and we know people firsthand who are dealing with major issues from that every day. And sometimes it is they marry you and flee, and that's it, and they lose everything. Or in the case of this example, the person got married, and the person that they married has convinced him that they need 1,200% minimum wage of Nicaragua as a non-working housewife to live in Nicaragua, and that it's absolutely necessary. Even though no one else in the country needs it, they've convinced him that life is expensive. They've convinced him he can't get residency. They've convinced him that a lawyer is necessary. They've convinced him all these things, that it's expensive and hard, and it's honestly, and I hate to say it, and he's watching these videos, right? So I'm really trying to help him get the mindset that all of it's a lie. Everything was a lie from the beginning, and I'm sorry to have to say that about someone's wife in this case, but they set you up and are continuing to lie. They've let him move back to the United States and suffering without a home, if the story is true, to pay the bills for the entire family here in Nicaragua. He is sending so much money that anybody, absolutely anybody, could live. And these are people who could go get jobs. These are people who have access to special resources. They have access to American resources. They have all kinds of things. Way better situation than the average Nicaraguan. And they don't have to do anything because they are living the life, because he is sending so much money to them. And he says they're burning through $2,000, $2,500 per month. But normal Nicaraguans average only $200 per month income with no American to help them. That is the average, and that's really hard. But if you find Nicaraguans who have a household income of $500 to $800, yes, they're not getting into middle income. They're not middle class. They're struggling. It's paycheck to paycheck, but they have full health care. They have great internet. They have all kinds of things. They have cell phones. They're putting food on the table. They're able to raise families. They're able to have nice houses. They're able to be safe. They have all these things that he doesn't have in America, right? He's living in a terrible city. He's living out of a van on the beach with working full time just to send the money so that people can live really, really outrageously good lives in Nicaragua. And great for him, he's funding the country, but he thinks they need it. He doesn't realize that they're completely scamming him and have been scamming him from the beginning and have set up all the people in his life to lie to him. So he has no idea what Nicaragua is like. He was here for most of a year and doesn't even have the casual first weekend knowledge that you should have of Nicaragua. Had you arrived, gotten yourself an apartment, moved in, hooked up a TV, got some internet, and hung out for the weekend, you would have more knowledge of Nicaragua as to what it costs, how you do things, what is done. Not the marriage thing, but he would have more idea of how much it costs to live and all that had he spent one weekend living on his own. That's all it takes, right? Go rent an apartment and realize you get an entire house for $150. For what he's eating in the United States, he could eat here better for $5 to $10 per day. Everything that he needs fits into a small envelope of an additional $100 to $200. Now, it would be very lean living, but being able to live for under $600, $700 in your own house, not just an apartment, not a car, but actually have your own house with a TV and couches and your space, and you can do things like play video games or watch Netflix or whatever every day, all within that $700, and eat, right? And that's not cooking for yourself. That's still going out to a restaurant every day, of course, on foot. Very basic street food, but grilled, good quality street food with potatoes and all the fixings. That's in that price envelope, had you done that even for a weekend. right? It would give you the money. Okay, it only cost $700 to live okay. Imagine what $1,200 would do. And that's as a foreigner. Imagine a Nicaraguan who lives at home with their family and doesn't need to pay that $150 rent, that is sharing a food cost with their family. What was $10 a day for you could drop to $3 per day. Not that it should. Spend a little bit of money. I'm not saying be a miser, but you don't need to send $2,000, $2,500 per month for a 24-year-old to be able to live in Nicaragua. That is not the case. I don't know anybody making that kind of money living here. I do, but very, very few. And those that do make that kind of money are living so well. They definitely own multiple businesses. They definitely do crazy things. You know, they can take private planes whenever they want. They can do anything they want, right? So it's important to understand. You got to have these contexts. You can't let one person in Nicaragua control your worldview because you put too much power into someone's hands. When you're new to any country, new to any place, and you let one person manipulate your worldview, the chances that they're not going to take advantage of that are relatively low. I'm not saying that the average person will do it. I'm saying that the percentage of society who can't resist you handing them the keys to your kingdom is often too much, especially when that person is incredibly poor, has very few other opportunities, and you may be the one chance they have in their lifetime to climb out of the situation that they're in. You can't expect them not to take advantage of that situation. And if you just open the door to it, you're going to be the person they target. And that's the thing. If you set yourself up to be this obvious target, even if 99% of people would never take advantage of that, the 1% that will is going to gravitate towards you and probably find you. So assume that they will. Thanks for joining me. Like and subscribe. Get down in those comments. Let me know about your experiences, people that you've heard, what's happened to you, how you've protected yourself, how you failed to be protected. If you'd like to support the channel, it would be much appreciated. You can buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/Scott Allen Miller. As always, like, subscribe. Throw this link into social media, Facebook and Twitter and Reddit. Those things, man, it helps. Thank you so much. Put it in those expat groups if you can. And as always, I will see all of you tomorrow.